This is Coach Eichner's Math, and today we will be talking about equations of a line. There'll be three main forms we're talking about. We'll talk about standard form, we'll talk about slope-intercept form, and we will talk about point-slope form. We'll just briefly mention standard form. The main part of this lesson will be about slope-intercept and point-slope form. These will be the two that we will use heavily in our class. Standard form. Will be written in the form ax plus by equals c, where a, b, and c are all constants, and we're trying to make a, b, and c integers and making a positive at all costs. But for now, I just want you to be able to recognize standard form. Talking about slope-intercept form. Slope-intercept form has a slope and an intercept in the equation. And it's written y equals mx plus b, where m is my slope and b is my y-intercept. An example of this would be if I have the slope of 3/4 and I have to go through the point 0, -3. Well, 0, -3 is the y-intercept, because if I were to draw my graph and go 0 in the x direction and -3 in the y direction, I would be on my y-axis, which makes it the y-intercept. So I have all my information needed, because -3 is b and m is 3/4. So I would write the equation in line y equals 3/4 x plus b. In this case, b would be -3. So we got to make sure that we change our sign. We'd say y equals 3/4 x minus 3. And that would be the equation of my line. Second way you might see this. Say the slope is -1/3. And they may just tell you the y-intercept is 4. In this case, again, I have everything I need. 4 is b, and my slope is -1/3. So I would write y equals mx plus b, and I would plug in the pieces of information I know. -1/3 x plus 4 would equal y, and that would be the equation of my line. That easy and that simple. Now, what they might do is tell you that the slope is 2. And they want it to go through a point 2, 4. Now, they haven't told me the y-intercept. It's still possible for me to use the slope-intercept form. It just takes a little bit more work. So I'd say y equals mx plus b. But this time I'm going to have to find b. So I'm going to plug in my y. I'm going to plug in my x. I'm going to plug in my slope. So I would say 4 equals 2 times 2 plus b. 4 equals 4 plus b. So when I subtract 4 from both sides to get b by itself, 0 equals b. So in this case, y equals mx plus b. I can say that m is 2 and b is 0. Anytime I'm adding 0, I can always get rid of it, and I can say y equals 2x. And that would be the answer. Now, because they didn't give me the y-intercept, I can do this same problem in a little bit different way. If they tell me that the slope is 2 and the y-intercept is 2/4, or excuse me, the point is 2/4 that they want to go through, they did not tell me the y-intercept, so I have the ability to put this into point-slope form. Y minus y1 equals m x minus x1. And this is point slope form. It's called point slope form because I have a point, 2, 4, and I have a slope, 2. So x1 and y1 would be my point. So I will plug in 2, 4. So I'd say x minus 2. And I would say y minus 4 equals 2x minus 2. Now, in this case, if they tell me I can leave it in point slope form, this might very well be my answer. However, if they ask for slope-intercept form, or you need to put it in slope-intercept form for some reason, say you're looking for the y-intercept, I have to go ahead and distribute and say 2x minus 4 on that side, and say y minus 4 on this side, add 4 to both sides to get y by itself, and say y equals 2x, negative 4 plus 4 would give me 0, so that would cancel itself out. I could just leave it as y equals 2x. So it's possible to use two forms for the same problem. I can use slope-intercept form, where I have to solve for the intercept, or I can use point slope form, in which case I may be able to do it without having to solve to this step. Your answer could show up in this form right here without having to distribute or solve. So please make sure that you're able to do it both ways. Let's look at another problem in point slope form. Say they give me 2 points. They say 1, 4 and 4, 13. And they want me to solve for the equation of a line. They haven't given me a slope, but I have to find one. So that's the first step. I'm always going to find the slope first because it's required for every form that we're going to use. So the slope is always the rise over the run, which in this case would be 13 minus 4 over 4 minus 1, which would be 9 over 3, or just 3. So if I know my slope is 3, I only need one of these points now. I'm going to use the point 4, 13. I have the option of doing it either way. I could do slope-intercept form, where I have to solve for b, or in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use point slope form again. Y minus y1 equals mx minus x1. And I'm going to plug in my x, I'm going to plug in my y, and I'm going to plug in my slope. I'm going to say y minus 13 equals 3x minus 4. I'm going to distribute and say 3x minus 12, y minus 13. To get y by itself, I'm going to add 13 to both sides, and I would find that the answer is y equals 3x plus 1. Now, they may not have asked you for slope-intercept form. If they don't ask you for slope-intercept form, they just ask you to write the equation of a line, I could stop right here at this step, which would be point slope form. Either way works, as long as you make sure you're reading the directions and know what they're asking for. So to take it and throw a little wrinkle in, let's look at the same problem, but now, knowing the points 1, 4 and 4, 13, what if they ask for a line parallel and through the point 2, 3? So I know I've got a line that goes through the points 1, 4 and 4, 13. We already found the equation of that line. It was y equals 3x plus 1. So we already found that piece. But now we have a line parallel through the point 2, 3. So I know the slope has to be 3, because for parallel lines, my slopes are always congruent. And I know I have the point 2, 3. Again, when I have this information, I like to use point slope form. So I'm going to say y minus y1 equals 3x minus x1. Now notice I automatically plugged in my slope right there. I'm going to come back and I'm going to plug in my point into my equation and say y minus 3 equals 3x minus 2. If they don't ask, I can leave my equation right there. If they ask you to write your equation in point slope form, that's what you say. If they ask you to write the equation in slope-intercept form, you need to do a couple extra steps, including distributing. So I would say 3 times x is 3x. 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. Y minus 3 equals 3x minus 6. I want to get y by itself, so I'm going to add 3 to both sides. And I would say y equals 3x minus 3. And that would be point slope form. Notice, that would be y-intercept form. Slope-intercept form. Notice my slope is 3 in both. That's because my lines are parallel. What if I had started with 1, 4 and 4, 13, which we found was y equals 3x plus 1. But instead of saying I want a line parallel, I said I want a line perpendicular. I want a line perpendicular through 2, 3. Anytime I have a perpendicular slope, my slope is going to be the opposite reciprocal. By opposite, I mean I'm going to change the sign, and by reciprocal, I need to flip. So I know that the slope was 3, so the opposite would make it a negative number. And to flip it, it would be 3 over 1, so to flip it, I would say 1 over 3. And my new slope would be negative 1/3. Now that I have my new slope, I need to use my point. I'm going to say y minus 3 equals negative 1/3 x minus 2. Now right here at this point, I've got the same situation. If they don't ask for a specific equation, that's a great equation to leave it in, because that is point slope form. If they specifically ask for slope-intercept form, I've got to do a little bit more work. I've got to distribute and say negative 1/3 x minus 2 thirds, and then y minus 3 on this side, which means I'm going to add 3 to both sides. So I would say y equals negative 1/3 x. And when I'm adding, I'm thinking about it, I've got 2 wholes. I'm going to say plus 2, and I take away 2 thirds. So I'd say 2 and 1/3. Or if you want to leave it, if you don't want to have mixed numbers, you want to leave it as an improper fraction, we could have said 7 thirds. Either way would work. This would be considered slope-intercept form. Notice my slope, when I'm doing a perpendicular line, my slope is the opposite, which means it's a negative since this was a positive. And it is the reciprocal. Instead of 3 over 1, it is 1 over 3. So make sure that you're being real careful and changing your slope when you need to for perpendicular lines. That concludes today's lesson. I appreciate your attention. Please make sure that you have any questions ready to go for me next class.